Hey friends, in today's video, I want to talk about how we can avoid making large Agile Release Train launch failures and mistakes. As you know, an Agile Release Train is a large program. By its very definition, is between 5 to 12 Agile teams. That's between 50 and 125 people. And in many instances, I've seen Agile Release Trains that are even bigger than that. But regardless, what we're talking about is a lot of people, which means it costs a lot of money. So we really want to get this right. After launching 11 Agile Release Trains since 2013 and having made all of the mistakes in the book, I want to make sure that I can walk you through some of the thought processes and some of the concepts and ideas so that I can save you some of those pains and help you to launch a powerful, amazing, and successful Agile Release Train. So let's get started. But before we do, I want to walk you through an essential concept, a concept that you may well have heard before, but a concept that takes on a completely new flavor when we're working at scale. And that is the theory of constraints. So this is the key idea that we can learn from the theory of constraints. And it goes something like this. Every process or system has a constraint, a bottleneck. It may be called an impediment. And focusing our improvement efforts on that constraint is the fastest and most effective path to improved productivity. And that's the essence of our video today. So it's a methodology for identifying the most immediate, the most important limiting factor that stands in the way of achieving our goal. In this case, it's to launch an Agile Release Train that is capable of achieving the program objectives. And to do that, we need to systematically improve the constraints until the constraint is no longer a limiting factor. But here's the thing. You see, when we have a constraint, its impact gets amplified at scale. And what that means is when we have a constraint or a pinch point, it can have far more than an impact on just my or individual productivity. For example, I could impact 5 or 10 or even in extreme circumstances, the entire Agile Release Train if I end up becoming that bottleneck. And certainly we don't want that. So you may be a product manager, for example, somebody that's responsible for outlining the vision, the what, the goals, the objectives, the epics and the features. But that person may be, for example, new to the role, or they may have capacity issues or capability issues. And so what we may end up with is something that is vague or is poorly formed. Now, the problem with something like that is, as I said earlier, is this could have massive implications that reverberate across the entire Agile Release Train. So let's have a walk through the theory of constraints and how we can apply that to launching a powerful and effective Agile Release Train. So the step number one, we need to identify the most impactful and the most important constraint that we might have on our Agile Release Train. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to assess our overall context. This could be the organizational context, the divisional context, your program, how it was set up before. For example, if you've got specific challenges in specific areas that you might have had before, for example, you may have really struggled in being able to release value, or you may have different kind of challenges with the amount of time it takes to make key decisions, or you may have challenges with prioritization. Regardless of what it is, what we need to be able to do is we need to identify that problem or that constraint, and what we need to be able to do is we need to see what is the impact of that constraint. So step number one, we need to identify the most important and the most impactful constraint that we have on our Agile Release Train. Now this can fall into one of two main areas, at least that's how I like to think about it. One is that constraint that is there based upon our context. It could be the organizational context, the division context, or any of the challenges that we have had in the past. So for example, in our organization, if we've always had a problem being able to release value in a timely fashion, that is something that we want to try and understand. Why is that? Is shifting towards the Scaled Agile framework and launching an Agile Release Train likely to solve that problem? or not? Is there something specific we need to do about that? The other way I like to think about things is individuals now. We've got a lot of new individuals across our Agile Release Train, up to 125 people. It is likely that there are going to be a significant number of people that have varying levels of experience across your Agile Release Train. What is the capability of those individuals and what is their capacity? Are they available enough to be able to do the job and the task that is asked upon them? So understanding that and identifying the key constraints is your first step. Now, let's just say, for example, as we said, we've got our product manager. We've identified that they have a capability issue. They're still learning on the job. And as a result of that, we've got issues that we need to resolve in terms of the clarity, in terms of where we're going, the goals, the objectives, and this may manifest itself in terms of vague features or something else. So the next thing we want to do is we want to exploit the constraint. And how do we do that? Is we look to see how we can make quick and rapid improvements so that we can alleviate and mitigate the situation. And so in this example, what we could do is we could pair this individual up with, say, for example, a product manager from another Agile Release Train that's a little bit more experienced, that can actually help or support, or we could get a coach in to provide them with some guidance so that you can mitigate that challenge. We don't have a constraint that actually impacts a large swathe of the Agile Release Train. Then we're going to subordinate. What that means is that we're going to communicate and we're going to adjust. We're going to communicate to the Agile Release Train. We've identified this bottleneck. This is the implications of that. So, for example, if I'm an architect and I'm responsible for putting together the architectural runway, I'm going to want to work with the product manager and whoever is there to assist that person to make sure that I don't fall foul of not having clear enough requirements for me to be able to create that coherent architectural vision that's going to be needed for us to execute correctly and efficiently and effectively. Once we've done that and we've subordinated all of the individuals on the Agile Release Train, the next thing we want to do is we want to do what's called elevate. We need to now, all of us need to level up and make sure, first of all, we address the primary constraint that we have around the product management function. We want to improve that and make sure that we can shore that up. We can do that through training. We can do that through, as I said, additional support. But also what we want to do is we want to look across the Agile Release Train. We want to make sure that we embed within them and try and infuse within them a growth mindset and a way in which they can actually focus on learning and growth and improvement. And the other thing we want to look at is we want to see how we can support and grow each and every single individual within our Agile Release Train. Once we've done that, we also want to have a look and see how we can, as I said, improve any of the Agile Release Train challenges that we actually have. And so after that, we've got next, which is effectively means don't stop. You've identified one constraint, you've dealt with the constraint. Now we need to move on to the next constraint. What is the next biggest constraint that we need to do, and so on and so forth. This concept is outlined in the Scale Agile framework as relentless improvement and is a very important part of the house of lean. And this is basically, we've always got this sense of urgency and danger as individuals. How am I going to get better? How am I going to improve? How are we going to make things better for ourselves and our colleagues and our customers? And also as a team and also as an Agile Release Train. So we want to make sure we have that. And so in this way, when we identify the most important critical constraints and we focus all our energies and effort on that, and we do it in a methodical and effective way, and we continuously do that, what you end up with is an Agile Release Train that is predictable, that is there's constantly growing and improving, and you're able to deliver on your goals. And guess what? You're able to have some great fun doing, growing and learning and delivering all the outcomes that are needed and required and expected from your Agile Release Train. And so there you have it. I hope you found that useful. Some ideas over here in terms of how you can apply the theory of constraints to make sure that you have a powerful and amazing Agile Release Train. I hope you found that useful. If so, please check out one of my other videos over here on powerful agile release trains. And if you do want to know about PI planning, then you can click on my PI planning series over here, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care. Goodbye.